Welcome everybody. Today on 13th of May, we're talking about AI for business owners and decision makers. What can it do for you and for your business finances? I'm Graham Potts, I'm Managing Director of Wessex Commercial Solutions, and my colleague Linda Carrington, the Practice Management Director, is here to deal with all the techie bits on AI. Anyway, if you can pop questions or anything I don't want to answer, basically, if you can pop questions in the comments, and we'll hopefully catch up with them at the end. If I see something in the middle, I will go through it with you. Anyway, before we look at how AI can help business owners, Linda, can you start by demystifying AI, artificial intelligence, for the audience? What exactly is it? And how different is it from traditional software systems?
Okay, sure. So I've put a little graphic together just to help us work through that, Graham. Because traditional code, and if we're thinking about business applications, we're talking about Excel and all its predecessors, even the basics of cloud accounting platforms like Xero, they follow instructions. So the outcome is really predictable. And it means that, you ask them a question, you get the same answer each time. Really, really predictable. Artificial intelligence is a really broad term, and it covers quite a range of things. I'm going to delve into that a little bit more later. But artificial intelligence is less about following instructions and more about spotting patterns. And it's the results that it gives us isn't as predictable as traditional code. So what they'll tend to do is give you a confidence level, but that confidence level will vary, and sometimes you get results that are totally off the mark. But unlike traditional codes, the systems are learning, for want of better words, so they get better over time. And they get better very quickly, actually. We've seen that over the last 2 or 3 years in particular, when AI products have become accessible to businesses.
Okay. But is AI, better than traditional? Is it always better?
It isn't always. So one of the things that we did quite a few years ago now, I think before COVID, was we helped provide some feedback to developers of an early AI-based cash flow platform. And one of the problems that we had was lack of predictability. So, they put together this cash flow based on the data that was in Xero. And you, Graham, were getting really frustrated with it at points, because I know that you couldn't see why it was generating some of the results. You're like, but hang on, it must have missed VAT, or it must have missed payroll, or that was how you can see how you thought on it.
We did it basically. I looked at the spreadsheet cash flow, the Excel spreadsheet or Google sheet that we've got for cash flow for Wessex, and it produced something different, and it was quite wildly different as time went on. And I think that was the whole point, that it doesn't pick up everything, but they will get better and better. So they will learn and learn. The coding will get better, so things will get better. But I don't think, unless it's very simple cash flow, and we'll go through this in a minute, but unless you've got all the information going in correctly and you use the system correctly and fully, the output you'll get won't be that good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So hopefully we'll see improvements soon. But just carrying on, also, I keep on hearing two different types of AI.
Yeah.
Machine learning and generative AI.
Yeah.
What's the difference? What do they mean?
Yeah, so AI is this big umbrella term, and both are subsets of under that umbrella, and they're both based on training data. Now, I'm really lucky. I got to study data science and look at actually run my own little machine learning scenario back in 2020. And machine learning is all about prediction, and it tends to use slightly more structured data. So when I was working on this course, we were given a data set which included some really easily captured characteristics of women in India who, and it showed within, sort of, if you imagine like a number of columns, final column told us whether or not the woman developed gestational diabetes. That was diabetes in pregnancy. So we trained a model using a coding language called R. I'm getting really techie about this now. Once we'd done that, we provided another set of data, but without telling it whether or not they developed diabetes during pregnancy. And the model predicted whether or not they would develop, or they did develop diabetes, and actually did with a fairly high degree of accuracy. So, you can see how tools like that will be used to flag up issues with a risk factor attached, if that makes sense. And there'll be some business applications.
I think I can understand that. I think it's what I call statistics, and it's actually what you use for, like, maybe life assurance, whether this person, tick the box, are you a smoker, are you what, and the AI the generative learning will think, well, from the basis of what we've got of the history, we would say this person, the average is they would last another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah, so it gives that sort of thing. Yeah. So
with generative AI, we've got these large language models, and they're trained on a vast array of data. And by that, I mean web data, books, coding banks. That's where snippets and chunks of code, computer code, are captured online. Academic work, all sorts of academic data that informs academic work as well, and tools such as ChatGPT that everybody will have heard of by now, and Gemini, which is Google rebranded. It was Bard, so they rebranded early this year. It's now Gemini. So those tools make use of the large language models and the generative AI, and allow us to work more creatively, because they are working with such huge volumes of data. One of the challenges, though, is that bias is built in with data. So the information or the results that we get from AI is only as good as the data that the AI is trained on. And one of the ethical issues is about lack of diversity in the tech sector. Means that the data that there's a lack of diversity in the data that's available. But the other problem that we're going to have is, we know in accounts, if you haven't got good quality data that reflects the business that you're dealing with, then you don't get good quality results and analysis.
Okay.
Okay. All of that.
I was going to say, well, that brings us moves on nicely, so we say, onto how AI can help people with their accounts.
Yeah. So there are three kind of number crunching aspects that I want to look at. The first is data processing. It can help with compliance tasks. And so those are the kind of boring bits. And then it can help with data interpretation analysis, which is where you get into more interesting stuff. But actually, there's a really strong argument that the biggest focus area for AI can actually be, or the biggest use case can be in communication. And that was something that was picked up by the project management tool that we use called Carbon. They put out a report indicating that people see one of the biggest use cases as being communication.
So when you say communication, what do you actually mean? Because, how do we use AI in communication? Or how do we use it?
I think distilling, one of the challenges that business owners face is there's a huge amount of information sitting inside their systems, whether it's their accounts or any other systems, and the communication side of things is going to be picking out priorities, summarizing things for them, translating some of the the accountancy speak, the technical stuff into
a decent output.
Yeah, into language that people can
understand. Yeah,
and can do something with. Yeah.
Okay. So many businesses that we see, manual data, spreadsheets, replication, etc., remains a massive time-consuming task. How valuable is AI and automation?
It's going to be really important. But one of the challenges is quality control. So, we talk about rubbish in, rubbish out, and that is still the same for AI. And even go and ask ChatGPT the wrong question, or don't give it all the details, it gives you a rubbish answer. And we're seeing that same issue in accounts and bookkeeping.
Yeah, and that's what will be our next LinkedIn Live, which we'll go through later. But it is the importance, especially as you get bigger, to have a very good bookkeeper and understand how that information goes into the system. Then you'll be able to use these tools to get the right output to suit you and your business. But the other thing you keep on hearing is people are worried about losing their jobs.
Yep.
Is this a concern, or maybe a concern, or not a concern?
Well, people worry about it. As Carbon, so that's our project management tool, they found that 1/3 of accountants are worried. And when we speak to bookkeepers in our clients' businesses, I know that they're worried. But actually, resources are scarce. It's hard, it's hard to find good accountants and bookkeepers. So, but also actually, as we free up time, we take away some of the mundane tasks. I feel really strongly that time can be used for value generating activities, so business development, product, and service delivery, customer service. Those are the things that add value to our businesses. And I think that there are better things that you can be doing than manually entering data or making calculations. Even if it's not work, I like to think that we can free up business owners' time and create flexibility in businesses that people can do focus on their own priorities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the key is, Kim was saying about the bookkeeping, and it's the same with anything, is getting quality. Mm-hmm. And bookkeepers that actually are good and proper bookkeepers. I mean, I'm talking about bookkeepers as a profession, not someone who's not done any like qualifications or whatever. But it's the same with anything, and with accountants, but you've got to be more of a interpreter and support to grow, and advisory, rather than just doing a compliance, just keep on churning something out. So the good ones know they got to learn. Yeah, the ones, if you are actually thinking that your role won't change in the future, then you're the ones that probably should be, and that's maybe the 1/3 that's worried.
It will be, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just move on. Let's delve into more the practical side. So let's have a look at DEXT and Xero, because we use both of them in Wessex and for our clients. Yeah. So if we're looking at the practical side, does AI power these tools? And can you give some examples?
Yeah, so there's AI behind each of those platforms. So on DEXT, the app machine reads your data. So that's the bill or receipt that you email in or you photograph with the app. It codes it, and it does it actually consistently well at reading the data. Makes fewer errors than humans do, which is slightly scary. It codes it, removes duplicates. Xero, among other things, will look at your bank feeds, check for matching transactions. So that's looking at basically a bank statement and identifying accounting transactions that will match what's coming through from the bank. Sometimes it indicates a few possibilities, but that does make reconciliation a quick and easy process.
Okay, and we've obviously touched upon already cash flow forecasting, and how that is crucial for any business, and we've touched upon the tools at the moment. But how can, as of today, how can AI assist in more accurate and reliable predictions?
Yeah. I think with limitations as of today, Graham, I'm still, and both of us are still looking for a cash flow tool that will really work well. But the tools can and will certainly in future, we'll see them much better at highlighting the gaps in cash. It points in the month or the cycle where you don't have enough money in the bank to meet your business requirements. So there's pinch points, and I think they will also summarize key issues. So issues perhaps around particular late payments, or and of course, actually, I think also they'll allow us to run much better scenarios, indicating, well, if we could just tweak this here, let's see what impact it would have.
That's where I see it being really powerful. If you get the information in right, is the what ifs. What if we did this? What if we changed this again? And it's something that we'll cover in the future. Okay. Are there any prerequisites to have AI using AI in your bookkeeping and accounts?
So it's really important that we give the technology the information. You need to bring the transactions in and record decisions as soon as they happen, so that the tool has all of the data that it needs. So that's bank feeds, sales data, bills, receipts, and expenses. If you've made some decisions about what you're going to pay and when, you need to capture that. Those are already things that you can do in Xero. You can tell Xero what payments you think you're going to receive and when you're going to receive them. You just can't generate accurate accounts without it, or cash flow forecasts. And human oversight is so key. Even the chief product officer at DEXT, so our bookkeeping product we've been talking about, Stephen Eddington, says that AI can hallucinate or generate incorrect outputs if it's not properly trained or validated. And he says this is why human oversight and validation remains essential in ensuring the accuracy and reliability of AI-generated insights. So that human touch is still key, but you've got to give the systems all of the information that you have as a human.
Okay. So if we look ahead, if coding transactions and cash flow forecasting are the focus areas now, what other areas do you see AI transforming business management?
Yeah, so in the short to sort of medium term, or short term really, actually, I see much better automated reconciliation coming in. I also think credit control is a massive growth area for AI in accounts. We're already seeing that on our direct debit platform, Go Cardless, where you've got intelligent retries available for failed direct debit payments. I think we should be expecting to see intelligent credit control. So that could be personalized email sequences. Xero's got fairly standardized sequences, sequences you can tailor. But I think we'll see these things being personalized. And I think the other thing that I'm expecting to see much more of very soon is AI-powered reviews of your accounts and alerts on your accounts dashboards, so flagging up those key issues.
Flagging up the red flags, basically. What you need to do. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So while AI brings valuable information, the ultimate decision still rests with humans.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some key things that business owners and decision makers should consider when using AI-powered tools?
Well, as well as the sort of practical considerations that I mentioned earlier about getting the right information in, there are a load of other things that you need to think about when you're using AI. Let's start with the environmental impacts, because AI, and in particular platforms that use large language models, use substantially more electricity and water than traditional computer systems. So that's a consideration. Data security is a huge issue. Your provider will tell you how they secure your data if you check. And the rule of thumb that I work with is, if you're not paying for the product, don't expect too much. The saying is, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And even if you are paying, check what security is in place.
Yeah. It's, if you've got the free chat GPT, all the information you put on there is in the public domain. You're part of the product, as you said.
Exactly. Yeah. You are the product. You need to be careful about it. And thinking about ChatGPT and Gemini and the like, it's such an easy way for people to get their work done quickly, that you have to get a policy in place, if you don't already have one, to make sure that and make sure that staff understands what the do's and don'ts are with these platforms. There are ethical issues as well that I mentioned. There's lack of transparency. We don't know what information, and we can't know, actually, as humans, we can't know what information the results we're getting are based on, because there's just too much for us to comprehend. There's also built-in bias. One of the there's been some really high-profile discussion about bias and racism in relation to image generation and manipulation. Back in 2020, Twitter had to apologize because its AI was automatically focusing on white faces when it cropped images. And a lot of providers have taken that seriously, have done some work to try to address some of the racism in the system. But Gemini, back in February, had to withdraw their image tool, because one of the things, its AI was still making mistakes. For instance, in historical scenes, it was adding inappropriate diversity into images that it was creating. So there's a lot of bias that needs to be, I don't know. We need to keep kind of checking and questioning the system, really.
Yeah, you don't have to believe everything. Don't believe it 100% what's in there. Question is the power of how you ask the question and how you keep on, and you chat something like Chat GPT, and you make sure, no, but put it in this. Is that correct? Just you've got to keep on find that until you get to the right answer. Okay.
And so lots of accounting and analytical skills is a concern as well. I remember, I remember all of the different phases of computers coming into business, and I've seen some certain skill sets go by the wayside, and I think loss of some of these analytical skills is a concern, and particularly because we're not attracting a sufficiently diverse enough group of people into computer science. That's a concern for me. And actually, there's we need a human touch. Can't expect business owners to survive and their businesses to thrive without conversations with humans about the money side, the financial side of the business. AI can't take those decisions away from people. And there's a hugely important role for accountants to play in being that trusted advisor and support for business owners. So I think I absolutely embrace all the technology, and I'm a huge fan of doing that and adopting the technology early, but we do need to proceed mindfully.
Yeah, I think we do. And I think it's something I had this conversation, being an older person. When I first did computer science at university, I did it with a master's degree.
Yeah.
The computer was, took out the whole library building ground floor, and it's probably less power than in my iPhone now.
Yes.
But I've gone through lots of stages and I've been involved with it. So I've still got the analytical skills from doing it manually, so I can see things. The worry is that actually not only, where's it going to go and how much we rely on it in the future, it's also how much will the human touch, actually how good will the humans be doing it in 20, 30, 40, 50 years time. But that's not for now.
Right.
Anyway, for people joining us who like to make, better use of AI in relation to their business finances, what, can you summarize succinctly, what would you actually recommend?
Yeah. So first thing is there should be absolutely no manual data entry of bills or receipts, minimal data entry for timesheets, and no double data entry. So you need to automate all of those things, and we're happy to help show you how to do those. The second thing I'd say is only make changes in the technology use if you want to do things differently. So do you want more hours in the day for you? Do you want to free up staff to focus on customer service? Do you want to reduce costs, increase sales, or improve margins? Have a goal. Don't just do it and play around a little bit, but don't just make big changes for the sake of it. And the third thing is to focus on the data capture process, the processing side of things before you get into analytics. So it's back to that rubbish in, rubbish out. You've got to have the right data in place. And I think finally, I would say that it's going to be you that's lying awake at night wondering if you made the right decisions in your business. It's not going to be the AI. So you need to keep talking to your trusted advisor about your ideas, your goals, your plans, and how your business is doing.
All right, thank you, Linda. Yeah, so a lot of food for thought and probably a lot to take in. So these LinkedIn webinars will be put on our website as well as on our YouTube channel if you want to go through it again. Should you wish to talk to us, either myself or Linda is the IT, pardon the expression, geek, does all our technical side and everything. So she'll help you with the technical side of AI. If you want it from more of accountancy, strategic, where's it going from what's the numbers mean? So the numbers will be me. So if you want a free consultation, we're happy to have a chat. Send us a message to info@wessexcommercial.com.
Absolutely.
Right. Next time we are going on to the bookkeeping, and why good quality bookkeeping is paramount for your business. And if you want to have these tools and they are coming readily available, you need to have very good bookkeeping. And you also need to know how that information is going into the system. It's not just putting an invoice in nowadays. If you want more information coming out so you can see where you're making money, where you're not making money, etc., then you need to actually put the information in correctly. Yeah. So this is good quality bookkeeping, the key to informed business decisions, and that's Monday, the 17th of June at 12:30. So until then, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Everybody.